Formula One is considered by many to be the pinnacle of engineering. It's the very top of the pyramid, a place where the greatest minds in the industry go to make the zoomiest cars in the world. But unsurprisingly, the need for speed can often turn into an arranger of danger. Today, F1 procedures are very thorough and safe, but it wasn't always that way. What happened? What's changed? What could possibly have driven the FIA, the most incompetent motorsports organization in the world, to shame in action? Boy, do I have a story for you. From the 1950s to the 1970s, drivers were basically hurling themselves around the track in what were essentially metal death trap safety. Who needs that when you're going to 100 miles per hour? Just ask the likes of Jim Clark you can rent, and Juan Hubert and Ayrton Senna, who met their untimely ends on the track. It's fair not, for in the 1980s safety became a top priority. Just kidding. The 1980s were the era of turbocharged engines, which made cars faster and even more dangerous than ever before. The sport was once again marked by deaths at the 1980 to San Marino Grand Prix, where She Lived in Nerve and Riccardo Pallotti both lost their lives. But fast forward to the 21st century, and we've got all sorts of safety measures in place, from safer barriers to HONS devices. The FIA has really outdone itself. There was one incident in particular, though, that really showed the world how deadly F1 could be. That was the day F1 really decided to change for the better, like a toxic ex finally promising to change. Sort of Yankee stuff. Was a tragic moment that shook the world of motorsport to its core. The young French driver had been competing in F1 for just 2 seasons when he suffered a horrific accident during the Japanese Grand Prix, October 3, 2014. It was supposed to be just another day. It was supposed to be just another race. Nico Rosberg lined up alongside Lewis Hamilton on the front row, with the fledgling Valtteri Bottas following just behind. Nobody had thought that those pre-race smiles would be short-lived. Something felt off from the very start. On race day, the race had begun under the ominous cloud of Typhoon Fanfan, with heavy rainfall intermittently drenching the Suzuka circuit and casting a somber and eerie tone over the race. On lap 42, Adrian Sutil's car would spin out of his control at turn 7, commonly referred to as the Dunlop curve, but the tractor crane was immediately released to tend to Sutil's car. However, things went from concerning to disastrous on the very next lap. As Giulio Bianchi's car lost control, he went hurling towards the runoff area and hit the tractor crane, causing a catastrophic collision. The left side of Bianchi's Morrisha car was left mangled and twisted beyond recognition, the roll bar destroyed as it slid underneath the crane. Bianchi was unresponsive and unconscious after the impact and was quickly rushed to the circuit's medical center. The weather was so treacherous that even air support was impossible, so he was transported by ambulance under police escort for 30 harrowing minutes to the nearest hospital, the Mire Prefectural General Medical Center in Yokachi. Initial reports from his father were grim. Julie had suffered a severe head injury and was undergoing surgery to reduce the extensive blood loss. The FIA confirmed that CT scans revealed the severity of Bianchi's injuries, and he would be admitted to intensive care after the surgery. Despite the best efforts of medical professionals, Bianchi's injuries were too severe, and he remained in a coma until his death 9 months later in July 2015. The loss of such a talented young driver was a devastating blow to the motorsport community and served as a stark reminder of just how dangerous Formula One can be. Bianchi's death in particular showed the watching world that despite advances in safety technology and improved safety protocols, the risk of injury and death remained a very real possibility for those who compete in Formula One. It is a sport that demands the highest levels of skill and bravery from its drivers, and the price of failure can be devastatingly high. Well, it's credit to where credit is due. The FIA did not let Julius' death go in vain. After the tragic incident, the FIA finally decided to conduct a thorough investigation into the circumstances of his crash, because obviously it's much easier to investigate after someone has died than to actually take preventative measures in the first place. However, despite its truly awful track record, the FIA did genuinely take groundbreaking steps to improve safety in the sport. They introduced the virtual safety car, because everything is virtual these days. Don't you know? Okay, boomer. The FIA also realized the sheer idiocy of releasing recovery vehicles onto the track while the fastest cars on the planet were driving around at breakneck speeds. But perhaps the most important of all was the fact that the FIA even introduced new guidelines for cockpit protection, leading to the introduction of the Halo in 2018. The Halo? What a masterpiece of engineering. I really do love it. The Halo was designed to withstand the weight of a goddamn London double-decker bus. That's right, 12 tons, balancing on a 7-kilogram carbon fiber covered frame. It's also made of strong, lightweight titanium tubing and is attached to the car's carbon fiber chassis at 3 points for maximum rigidity. And guess what? It only adds 9 kilograms to the car's weight, and it was also found to increase the driver's safety by a whopping 17. The Halo became compulsory in other FIA-sanctioned open cockpit classes, such as Formula E, F2, F3, and F4. But don't stop there. This baby is not only used in F1, it's also used in other single-seater series across the globe, such as the US IndyCar Series, the Japanese Super Formula Series, and the S5000 in Australia, because the people there are a lot smarter than the ones running the show in F1. Of course. And why was this beauty introduced? It's simple, really. The Halo was introduced to improve safety for drivers by preventing large objects from entering the car's cockpit. I mean, who needs a helmet when you have a Halo? Right. It's not like helmets have been working for the past few decades. But you know who has been working for the past few decades? I have been trying to get this video to you, so please subscribe. But you have a question about the Halo. I know you do, so I'm going to ask it for you. Does this Halo obstruct vision? Well, the answer is no. Its titanium construction means that the Halo's bars are relatively thin. The crossbar is at a height which means it's outside of the driver's peripheral vision when wearing a helmet, plus the central vertical pillar will disappear into the periphery when the driver is looking ahead. It's almost like magic, and this might shock you, so make sure you're seated. There was a huge outcry when the idea of the Halo was proposed, and the device was slated to be introduced because it was ugly. Yes, that was genuinely the only criticism most people had. It was borderline monkey brain level stupidity. Did everyone forget that drivers had died on track and should have always been protected better? 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton was quick to chime in, calling the Halo too drastic and the worst looking modification in F1 history. Of course, he understands safety is important, but come on, can't we prioritize looks over lives? And he wasn't the only one. Former world champion Damon Hill also had concerns. Kevin Magnussen couldn't bear the thought of an ugly car, proclaiming F1 cars aren't meant to be ugly. And Max Verstappen, always the shining beacon of reason, thought Halo was not only ugly but also unnecessary. Risk is good, he argued. We don't need this thing on top of the car. It's not just the looks. I don't think it's necessary, of course. Like any good twist in God's script, it didn't take long before the Halo proved its worth. In the very first season it was introduced, a Formula 2 driver's Halo was landed on by another car, and the driver was saved from potentially fatal damage. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. It happened again with Crozier in 2020. The guy's car was split in half, and the man still managed to survive emerging from a burning car in what was a scene out of a Hollywood action movie. Then, it saved Lewis Hamilton's literal spine from snapping when Max Verstappen decided to land his Red Bull on top of the bench. Then, it saved Jogwin's life in 2022 at the British Grand Prix again, despite what was one of the most horrific crushes. In F1 the Halo has proven that it can save lives again and again. We routinely have crashes these days. Maybe it's because the drivers are just worse, but very rarely are there any that are serious. So who needs a life-saving device when you have a love for speed and aversion to ugly cars? It's almost comical how much opposition there was to the Halo, considering F1 is supposed to be all about innovation and technology, but no 9 out of 10 factory teams didn't want it. Thank goodness for people like John Surtees, who actually care about the well-being of the drivers. His son Henry was killed during a Formula 2 race in 2009, and if something like the Halo had been in place, it could have certainly been prevented. Sebastian Vettel was always the unfaltering flag-bearer of common sense in F1, so it won't surprise you to know he was willing to sacrifice aesthetics for safety. And Fernando Alonso also called the Halo a necessary step when it was introduced. Those two are the reason I still have some modicum of faith in humanity. Many other measures followed the arrival of the Halo in F1. Roll bars were one of these measures, designed to flip a car over in the event it ends up upside down. Of course, it's always a bummer when the roll bar doesn't work, like in Joe's case at Silverstone last year. Luckily, intricate seat belts keep the drivers strapped in, and if things get too hot in the cockpit, they even have built-in fire extinguishers. The survival cell is another funky addition to the car. It's basically a little bathtub that the driver sits in, surrounded by a crumple zone meant to absorb impact. The drivers can feel all cozy and comfortable while they hurtle around the track at deadly speeds. And let's not forget about the safety standards that tracks have to meet. They actually have to have a certain number of Tech Pro barriers and runoff areas, not to mention medical facilities on site and even a helicopter and pilots ready for any emergencies. Formula 1 has come a long way. It's a sport that continues to learn and evolve each day, like a 5-year-old. Although I'm not sure how quickly they learn, because the last Australian GP was a shambles. Still, here's to hoping they can grow some more brain cells soon. We've talked enough about safety for F1 drivers. But what about your safety when I find out you still haven't subscribed to the channel yet? Think about that and make sure to watch my latest video, where I try to cover the entire history of F1 in under 20 minutes. What are you waiting for? Click foreign.